While loops. In this video, we will learn to write while loops in Java. As discussed in the Python unit, a while loop is a body of statements that executes repeatedly until the looping condition becomes false. To write a while loop in Java, we start by first writing the keyword while. Then, inside a pair of parentheses, we type the Boolean condition. This condition is the loop condition. Just like with the for loop, the loop condition controls how many iterations the while loop will execute. After that, we type an open curly bracket to indicate that we're about to begin typing the body of the while loop. Then on the next line, we indent, then type our conditional statements. After typing up our conditional statements, we close it off with a closed curly bracket. Okay. Now let's examine how a while loop works in our Java code editor. Here in this program, we start by initializing a variable named x to 0. Then we go to the while loop. Just like with Python while loops, the loop condition is evaluated before each iteration of the while loop. If the condition is true, then we'll execute the iteration. If it's false, then we will not execute the iteration and the while loop will be complete. In this case, the condition is true since 0 is less than 4. So we enter the while loop where it says print on the line the value of x followed by the word hey. And as you know, x is 0, so 0, then hey gets printed out. Then on the next line, x gets increased by 1. So now x is equal to 1. That's the last conditional statement. So now we return to the loop condition. Since x is equal to 1, the loop condition is still true. So the process repeats itself. We print out the value of x, which is 1, followed by hey. Then we increase x again. Now x is 2. The condition is still true, so we come back inside the while loop. We print out 2, and followed by hey. Increase x by 1, and now x equals 3. 3 is less than 4, so we come back in the while loop. We print out 3, hey, then increase x by 1. X now equals 4. 4 is not less than 4, thus the loop condition is now false, thus completing the while loop and completing our program. Let's look at another example of a while loop. Here we initialize our variable x to 5. And then for our loop condition, we say the while loop should iterate as long as x is greater than 0. So is this true or false? Well, since x is equal to 5, 5 is indeed greater than 0, so we enter the while loop, where in the first line it says print the value of x followed by a hey. So 5 hey gets printed out. Then in the second line, x is decreased by 1. We perform subtraction. So now x equals 4. That completes the last conditional statement. We come back up to the top of the while loop, the loop condition. 4 is greater than 0. Thus, we come back in the while loop. 4, hey gets printed out. X gets decreased again. Now x is equal to 3. Looping condition, still true. And thus, the process continues to repeat itself. 3 hey gets printed out. Then in the next iteration, 2 hey gets printed out. Then in the next iteration, 1 hey gets printed out. It's not until x equals 0 that the looping condition finally becomes false, thus completing the while loop. Now, suppose I were to switch the order of the two conditional statements, where now I'm decreasing x by 1 first, then executing the print statement. As you know, x is initialized to 5, thus making the loop condition true, so we will enter the while loop. However, before we print, x will get decreased first. It'll be decreased by 1 first. Then we print. Thus, the first print statement will print out 4 hey. That's the first print statement. Then the second print statement will print out 3 hey. Then 2 hey. Then 1 hey. Then 0 hey. Okay. Now you might be wondering, how did the 0 get printed if the condition is false when x is equal to 0? Well, remember, the loop condition only gets evaluated before and after a complete iteration. It doesn't get evaluated in the middle of an iteration. The x minus equals 1 statement caused x to become equal to 0, but we can't just exit the while loop there. We still have to execute the print line statement first before we can evaluate the loop condition and watch it become false. Now, suppose I get rid of the x minus equals 1 statement. Observe how this will affect the output. Once again, we initialize our variable x to 5. Then for our looping condition, of course, will be evaluated to true since 5 is greater than 0. So we print out 5 hey. Looping condition, Still true, x because x is still equal to 5, so 5 Hague is printed out again. Back to our loop condition, 5 is still greater than 0, so 5 Hague is printed out again, and again, so on and so forth. This is an example of an infinite loop, a loop that goes on forever. Okay? Whenever you are writing a while loop, make sure there's at least one statement in there that progressively brings your loop condition closer and closer to false during each iteration. Without this statement, you will have an infinite loop.